Welcome everyone, and thank you for attending tonight's special school board meeting for Evergreen Public Schools. For those of you that would like to join us, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next on our agenda is to adopt the agenda. I'll entertain a motion for such adoption.
I move to adopt the agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the agenda has been adopted. Next is our board consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the board's consent agenda.
I move approval of the board's consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the board consent agenda has been approved. Next, we have the superintendent's consent agenda, and for this, are there any comments? I have a comment. I need to recuse myself from accounts payable warrant voucher 346721. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the superintendent's consent agenda.
I move to approve the superintendent's consent agenda. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the superintendent's consent agenda has been approved. Next we have superintendent's report, so I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Steach.
Okay, first thing I want to point out is due to some technology issues with the video recording system that happened back in May and June, we are unable to get this whole video system we put in place last year working. We took a look at how much it would cost to get it upgraded and repaired, and in light of the fact that we're going to be replacing the ASC in the fairly near future, made a decision that we're just going to do audio recordings rather than video recordings of our board meetings until we get set up in the new boardroom. So just that's why we have the nice little recorder out here in front of us. I'm probably going to steal Gail's thunder on some of her good news report items. Last week I attended the Nonprofit Excellence Awards, and it was great to see the Ever School District Foundation being recognized as part of a partnership to addressing housing shortages with the work that we've been doing, or they've been doing, in trying to create better housing stability for many of our students. So it was nice to be able to participate in that. Last week, we also hosted at the ESD a research symposium on graduation assistance and supports with EAB, a company that we contracted with a little over a year ago, and invited many of the school districts from the whole Vancouver, Portland metro area. So we had attendance from Clackamas County, from probably 4 different counties attending a symposium and learning a little bit about some of the current research on what we can do to better help our students. Last Friday we had the House Education Committee was in town. They were actually in town Thursday and Friday. They visited the School for the Deaf and the School for the Blind on Thursday, did a tour of Gila High School on Friday, and then met with Bill Oman, myself, and Susan Dixon, as well as some SEH, part of the partnership we have with SEH, looking at career-connected learning opportunities. Had a good chance to talk to them about the bill we're working on towards modifying graduation requirements. And Representative Santos was very supportive of the philosophy and excited to hear that we're moving forward on that. So I thought it was a really good exchange, and ended up spending most of the day Friday with the House Education Committee. And I think at least that group is fairly well aligned with where we want to go with some of the educational initiatives, so that was good to see. Also on the graduation requirement plan, I presented to the Chamber Policy Committee last week. They unanimously voted to pass it on to the Chamber Board for their formal endorsement of that policy statement. So I'll be working now trying to connect with the Business Roundtable. And then just to let the board know, this weekend I'm headed to San Diego along with Derek and Chris, and we are the keynote opening presentation for our TM conference on Sunday morning. So got invited to do that. And good opportunity for us to show the great work that's happening in the Evergreen School District and the amazing things that our teachers and staff are doing. So, and that's what I have for today.
Great, thanks, John. Next, we have on our agenda the monitoring of district operations, and for this section, we're talking about operational expectations OE2, the emergency superintendent succession, second reading. At our last board meeting, we passed the first reading, and at this point, the board has received the monitoring report for OE2. And so, John, are there any updates or things you want to add for the monitoring report?
No, there was no comments from the board, from the community staff over the last couple weeks since we did the first presentation of the OE2 monitoring report. It'll be nice to have this formally approved so that while I'm in the air this Saturday, Mike is actually in charge since I'm out of contact. So at this time, I recommend that the board accepts the monitoring report for OE2 emergency superintendent succession as presented for second reading and in compliance.
Okay, thanks, John. At this time, I'll call for a motion from the board.
I recommend the board accept the monitoring reports for OE2 emergency superintendent succession as presented for second reading and declared in compliance.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I now throw it open to the audience. See if they have any comments or questions about this policy or the monitoring report. Okay, so seeing no comments or questions, I'll throw it to the board for any comments or questions that you may have.
I think it's important for people that aren't familiar with this policy, the importance of such a policy to have, and it's only if the superintendent is in any kind of a situation where he cannot be contacted and giving direction to things. So like you said, if he's up in the air on an airplane, if he, heaven forbid, were to get sick or, be in a situation. But it's also really important to know that we would never leave the district in the hands of somebody who doesn't also, I'm teasing Mike, but.
Why are we laughing?
Because it's just, no, but I think it's really important for people to note that this would never go into play without the board's knowledge. And it does not turn, just like with the superintendent, it does not turn over our authority as the elected officials for the school district. So he would be held to the same type of authority that John has. So he can't go running amok without us knowing about it.
Any other comments or questions? One comment I have is I really like how specific this says. I mean, we're being very prescriptive in terms of, as you said, Victoria, how we're making that assignment, but also to make that assignment, there's a whole checklist that the person becoming the emergency succession person has to initial every policy to make sure that they fully understand, so that in such an event, that person can, know exactly what their role is. So I like the specificity. Any other comments or questions? Okay, so at this time we'll take a vote to approve the monitoring report for OE2 and also signal that it's in compliance. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the monitoring report has been approved and shown to be in compliance for OE2. So thank you. Next on our agenda is the good news report. And even though the thunder may have been stolen,
There's enough good news to go around.
Oh, okay. Gail Spoler, Director of Communications and Community Engagement.
So, well, let's see, we'll skip the first one, other than to draw your attention to the lovely photo. We do have 3 semifinalists from Union High School, Amani Chapin, Aaron Green, and Philip Ming, who are semifinalists in the 2018 National Merit Scholarship Program. You also see East Vancouver Business Association longtime supporters of the foundation. Once again, $3,000 for student scholarships, and we appreciate appreciate that. I believe that was raised during the golf tournament that they had. 25 students at Evergreen High School over the next 2 years will benefit from the LULAC National Education Service Center grant that they got from the Ford Motor Company, $20,000, which will help implement the program to help students achieve on-time high school graduation and also pursue higher ed. So that center's been in place for a year now, and so additional support for them. I saw some of the photos, they aren't here, but the second-year cosmetology students from Cascadia Tech participated in the Vancouver Stand Down event, and they gave 42 haircuts during that process. And the photos were very delightful, and the veterans were very appreciative of the skills that the students brought to that event. Nautilus, their instructional technology department, has donated $2,200 worth of technology to Fircrest Elementary. The Orchards Evergreen Lions Club has also adopted Fircrest, and they will be providing the school with supplies and participating in the school's lunch buddy program. And then 2 of our staff members have recently been honored. Michael Iverson, the choir director at Union, was presented with the American Choral Director Association Outstanding Choral Conductor for the state of Washington. And then Jamal McKenzie, the campus security officer at Union, was awarded the Security Officer of the Year by the Washington School Safety Organization. So there's still a few left that John and I didn't mention, so be sure and go over the good news report. Thank you.
Any comments or questions for Gail?
You have one?
No,
Oh.
just wanted to make sure.
Okay.
Thanks, Gail. So now I call upon Chief Operations Officer Mike Merlino for a budget update.
Good evening. I will start with just saying we're still working on closing the books for 2017-18. Probably by the middle to, by the second meeting, we should have a better idea. Second meeting of October, we should have a pretty good idea what the number is. Bill is working through that and working hard through that. We've had some change of staffing in his department that when you have turnover, that always makes things difficult, but we're getting through it. The one thing I want to mention about so far this year, we've had one enrollment count so far. We started a little later than typically we would have, but we did make that happen by the 18th, which was the date. So I want to give you kind of an update. Remember last year we were down in terms of budget compared to particularly the elementary. So we felt like we were going to be somewhat more conservative this year as we went into the year. I've seen reports from WASDA and news reports out of the Puget Sound area that some of the districts up there have been hit by enrollment numbers coming in under what they had anticipated. On Seattle was like 750 kids, in Bellevue, I think Highline as well. We budgeted for 10,814 elementary students. Our count in September was 10,844. So typically what we'll do is just look back the last few years to see how do those numbers look in terms of September versus the average. Elementary will typically grow throughout the year. So looking at the last 3 years, looking at the ranges of growth, we should see an increase of anywhere around 100. We should be over budget anywhere from 125 to 195 or so students. So elementary, where we were under budget by about 300 last year, will probably be 150 plus thereabouts over what we had budgeted, which is great. Now, at the same time, what we always do at the beginning of the year is look at where are the students and how's it work, where are the class loads, and move people around if necessary, hire additional teachers if we need to do that as well. And when looking, working with Scott, looking at that, we really didn't need to make any adjustments. There was a small adjustment with the LAP program that we're still working through, but realistically, there wasn't a need to hire any additional teachers, and we didn't need to move any because of where the kids were. So that's great from that perspective as we start the year. That's a good thing right off the bat. Middle school, we budgeted 5,820 we would anticipate that we'll either be right around 5,820 to maybe 5,840. So middle school, we're pretty well on target where we expect it to be. High school, we budgeted for 7,179. Probably the lowest estimate would have us about 125 kids below that number at the high school, and the best case over the last few years would have us about 25, 30 below. So as it stands right now, if you look K-12, probably the worst case scenario is we're right about at where we had budgeted, which given where we were a year ago, that's fantastic. We don't need this year a lot of surprises at this point. I also have, like, if we have a best case scenario over the last 2 or 3 years, we'd probably be up about 175 kids. So each student is about $8,300 for us in the new model. And so we'd be somewhere, if you got to that level, it'd probably be about an additional $1.5 million for the district and funds for this school year. Obviously, we'll keep updating this throughout the year. We'll keep talking to you about those numbers. But certainly more like what we've seen in the last several years in terms of where we're at and what we think we're going to be at as compared to the budget. So that's, in my mind, that's really good news. It's also what they say, the 25th. So what are we, maybe 2 weeks into school? So it's very early. We'll have to look and take a look at the spending patterns after we get a few months under our belt. I know Janae was very happy that payroll was run and completed today so that the paychecks will be delivered. They won't be delivered, but they will be wired. And everything will be available on Friday. I know it was quite an undertaking for her and her staff to get all that done with people and insurance, and so that's a huge job. So as we get through the next few months, we'll start looking at estimates for where we think we're going to end up this year, and then that'll of course help instruct us on what we need to do as we move forward. But that's the enrollment at the beginning of the school year was a positive, certainly. I haven't heard anything from any other districts in Clark County.
What were those numbers again? Sorry, for the elementary school, the budgeted versus
The budgeted number was 10,814. The September number is 10,844. We typically grow throughout the year. Anywhere from what I did was look at the last 3 years, kind of what was the least amount that we grew from the September number to the average for the year. The lowest was 136, and the highest was 194. So we should be well over in elementary. It's positive that we aren't impacted in terms of class size, language that would require us to have to hire any additional staff. We're good where we're at. So that would theoretically be new money to help us look at the school year. Middle school, we budgeted 5,820. 5,779 is the September number, and we've typically grown anywhere from 39 to 50, so over the last 3 years. So we should grow to the point that we're right at budget or a little over budget in the middle school. And then the high school, we've had a little fluctuation the last couple of years in terms of, do we grow from September to the average or do we decline? A couple of years ago, we actually grew from the September number to the end of the year by about 7 kids. This past year, we dropped about 95 kids from September till the end of the year. So that's probably the biggest variable right now is what happens with enrollment in the high school. But we'll likely be under. We budgeted 7,179 in the high school, and we could be anywhere from 7,050 to 7,150, somewhere in that range.
So it sounds like elementary and high school are pretty much
Almost balanced, right? And I can say the third time if you guys want. I can
No,
just
sorry.
repeat that. No, I'm not making fun. I'm just Phil. All of a sudden, I felt like I think I just said.
That does sound like way better than.
It's better than.
projections
I mean,
year.
last year elementary, I think we were down about 300 in the elementary, and the high school was up a little bit. Middle school's been pretty close to what we had budgeted. And so we'll look at the middle school and the high school numbers as well in terms of overloads and how that looks. We've already started to look a little bit at that, but the In terms of overload pay, it doesn't really kick in until October, so the principals kind of have a month or so to balance that out. So we'll look further at that as we get through the month of September. I guess we're through the month of September. Next week, we'll look at it.
Any other comments or questions for Mike?
And I would just say there's a lot of stuff that's going to change this weekend when John's in the air. First thing is I expect that the rules of the golf tournament will change. And the awards will be handed out just a touch differently than we might have expected when John was in town.
Right to our team.
Exactly.
Just don't have a windshield on your golf cart this year.
We are expecting a windshield on the golf cart. Actually, we don't need one this year because it's going to be nice this year.
Yeah, we want the air conditioning.
Are you planning on any more Lifetime Achievement Awards this?
That will probably be, we'll figure that out Saturday night, probably. On the 19th hole, we'll give out the Lifetime Achievement Awards. That's all I have.
Thanks, Mike. Now we come to the part of the meeting for board comments. Do we have any?
I just wanted to say I was with John and company when the House Education Committee was here, and it did sound very much like what we are thinking about over the long term for graduation. It's definitely where their focus is headed, so I don't see us having a lot of pushback about it, which is good.
Well, I just got back from the Legislative Assembly for WASDA over the weekend. It was a fascinating experience and interesting to see some of the perspectives from the different school districts across the state. Our proposal that we put forth, Dr. Steach has been working on it for the graduation requirements, passed unanimously. So that was nice to see. I went up and spoke on it briefly and encouraged people to prioritize it high at the end, because that's what you did. So hopefully they listened to me. I'm not quite sure, but we'll see. And then last thing, Mike kind of mentioned it, we're not just golfing for fun, it's actually a fundraiser for Evergreen Citizens for Schools. So I think there's still a few teams maybe available, but Jenny's gonna join us and Mike, so it should be a good time. I asked him if him joining us would make us the winning team.
You passing that resolution or the policy is making us the winning team.
Any other board comments? Yeah, thanks, Vic and Julie, for going to those meetings. Anything else for board comments? Okay, future agenda items, do we have any? Seeing none, okay, so I guess we'll be going into recess. Oh wait, do we have any scouts in the audience?
Yes.
One scout. Would you mind standing up, introducing yourself? Tell us what school you attend and maybe what badge you're working on.
Okay, hi, I'm Josh. I go to Gila High School and I'm working on the communication merit badge.
Great. Well, thanks for attending, Josh. And if you have any questions of us, please come by after the meeting. So now we'll go into recess to sign some papers. After recess, we will reconvene in a board workshop across the hall. We'll be talking about some more monitoring reports, operational expectations, OE5, financial planning. We'll also be talking about the monitoring report for OE4, which is personnel administration. We'll have a discussion about elementary boundaries and update. We'll have a levy discussion. We'll have a board meeting debrief. We'll have a legislative update and a superintendent's update. So we are now in recess. Thank you for coming.